My sister married the man we both loved, then told everyone I fled abroad heartbroken. 6 years later, his failing company came begging for one investor, me. Ethan White had spent years telling us he liked gentle, considerate girls. Ella could turn sweetness on as easily as breathing. I could not. Whenever the three of us were together, he talked to her while I sat beside them like a telephone pole. On college graduation day, they collected their marriage license. He left the country, earned an MBA on a full scholarship, and built a startup. 4 years of work turned it into a real company. By the 6th year, it was publicly listed. Then I heard Ethan's cash flow was drying up. He posted that he was meeting a major investor and asked everyone to wish him luck. Ella commented, "Honey, you've got this. You're the best." I looked at the next morning schedule for my secretary. 9 a.m. financing meeting with the CEO of a small company, Ethan White. My mother called before midnight. "Ethan's come. Company can barely hold on. You have to help him." "Help him? How?" "You've been abroad for years. You must know people in investment. Make a connection." Ella is anxious. Then she added the comparison she never seemed tired of making. "You're over 30 and still unmarried. What's the point of building such a big career? Look at your sister. She has a good marriage and stayed here to take care of us. What have you ever done?" "I paid Dad's hospital bills when he had surgery." "You transferred $200,000. Ella stayed beside him for 7 days and nights. Money doesn't make you a devoted daughter." My finger rested on Ethan's name. "Mom, it's almost midnight." She lowered her voice only slightly. "At least find out what kind of investor he's meeting, so he can prepare." The investor was me. "I'll ask around." Ella sent a 36-second voice message. Next, she told me Ethan could not sleep. Repeated that I must know. People then paused, as if searching for the smallest detail about my life. "What is it you do again? Internet or something?" She had not forgotten to tell me how badly Ethan was sleeping, or how much pressure he carried. She had only forgotten the part of the conversation that concerned me. My IPO had been reported with my full name. She had never bothered to search it. The family group chat filled with encouragement for Ethan. Not one message concerned me. For 6 years, I had remained in that chat without truly participating. I read what they posted, sent money when it was needed, and watched their lives continue as though mine existed, only when it could be useful. Years earlier, when I closed my Series A, I had posted "Got Series A." No one asked what it meant. Ella replied, "You're still working on that little project. Keep it up." After that, I stopped sharing at 7 the next morning. Ella sent another voice message. This time, she mentioned the house they might mortgage and their daughter's kindergarten fees. She said Ethan had barely slept again. If the financing failed, their home might be next, then their child's schooling. Every consequence was arranged, so refusing her would sound like cruelty toward a child, rather than a business decision. About Ethan's company. Sweetness for Ethan, misery and obligation for me. Those were the two voices she used best. On my drive to work, Sarah Smith called. She had been my college roommate, but we had not spoken in more than 4 years. "Your sister mentioned you at dinner. She said she told everyone you went abroad because Ethan married her. She said you still haven't married because you can't let him go. What else? She said you cried at the airport. She feels terrible for you, but she also thinks you've always competed with her, even by studying abroad." In Ella's version, my MBA, the years of work, the stock exchange bell, and a company with more than 500 employees, all became the desperate performance of a rejected woman. Claire. My flight left at 4 in the morning. I took a cab alone. No one came to see me off. Ella didn't even know which day I left. How could she know? I cried. Silence met me from the other end. I ended the call. When I reached the office, the family chat was waiting. Ella wrote that I was back in the country but refused to contact her, asking whether I was still angry. Mom told her not to mind me. Dad said Ethan's financing was the only important thing that day. Their roles never changed. Ella was kind and wounded. I was petty, competitive, and unable to move on. Even when she accused me, Ella phrased it as concern. She asked whether I was still angry, giving everyone else the answer before I had spoken. Mom immediately told her that my silence was simply my nature. Dad closed the discussion by returning all attention to Ethan. My secretary, Amy, met me in the corridor. Starlight text, "Preliminary screening is ready. Does the 9:30 meeting stay the same?" "Yes." "How should we approach it?" "By the rules. Who he is doesn't matter. The project speaks for itself." At 7:23, Ethan messaged me for the first time in 6 years. He did not ask how I was. "I'm meeting an investor from Summit Holdings at 9:30. You've been abroad a long time. Can you find out what kind of person their CEO is? Another message followed. Ella said, you did something in investment banking. Help me ask around. This is important. Investment banking. That was all Ella had told him. He did not know Summit Holdings was my company. He did not know the CEO he wanted me to investigate was me. He also did not know what was already inside the file, waiting on my desk. His name was not protected by family history. There it sat beside debt ratios, structure, and product data, judged by the same standards as every other founder, asking us for money. When I did not answer, he tried again. I know you may still care about what happened before, but that's in the past. Do this for Ella. Then he asked whether I had seen his message. 6 years without a word. And within minutes, he became impatient because I had not made myself useful. He believed my silence had to be about him. He could not imagine. I had a company to run, and more than 40 emails waiting. I turned the phone face down. Amy entered with a due diligence report. There's one issue. Starlight's core product linker closely matches the conceptual framework. In the paper you published in 2016, your name doesn't appear anywhere in their material. I know. She asked whether we should begin an intellectual property process. I declined. A concept left in a notebook was nothing by itself. Ethan had at least tried to build something from it. The numbers would decide whether it deserved funding. They were not kind to him. For product lines, non-viable, an unbalanced technical team, customer acquisition assumptions based on data 3 years out of date. He wanted 30 million while his cash flow was collapsing. That was not a personal judgment. It was the same report any applicant would have faced. Across my desk at 8:50, Amy told me he had already arrived. He's 40 minutes early. Should we bring him to the meeting room? Yes. Give him 1 glass of water. The meeting begins at 9:30. She hesitated before leaving. The receptionist said he made a call after arriving. She added he wasn't quiet about it. The receptionist overheard him on the phone. He said he's dealt with plenty of investment companies our size. And today's meeting is only a formality. Summit managed 26 billion in assets. To Ethan, it was a routine stop. Do not bring him in 1 minute early, I said. At 9:28, Ella sent another message accusing me of deliberately refusing to help. If Ethan failed, she promised to tell her parents. It was because I was taking out my unmarried frustration on them. Her tone began worried and soft, then hardened without warning. She did not know I was 2 minutes away from the meeting. She only knew Ethan had asked something of me, and assumed any failure to provide it had to be revenge. Mom called immediately afterward. What's so important about that little company of yours? Ethan's matter is serious. If you can't help with one small thing, don't come home. 6 years abroad, and you haven't done one thing for this family. I tried to tell her I was at work. She spoke over me. In her mind, my schedule was negotiable, because whatever I did remained a little project, while Ethan's meeting counted as real business. The money I had sent, the company I had built, and the years I had survived abroad did not alter that ranking. Ella's voice floated in the background, telling her to stop because I must have my reasons. The gentle sister protecting me, while every accusation she had planted took root. The call ended. I remembered standing beneath falling confetti at the New York Stock Exchange, while hundreds applauded. In that moment, I had wished my mother could see me. I sent the video to the family chat. No one asked why hundreds of people were applauding, or why my name appeared behind the podium. No one asked what bell I had rung. 2 hours later, Ella asked whether I had gone traveling somewhere fancy. Then everyone discussed the color of Ethan's new car. Miss Harris Amy stood at the door. It's 9:30. Shall I bring Mr. White in? I straightened the materials on my desk. His debt ratio, cash flow, product failures, outdated model, and $30 million request were all waiting in front of me. Bring him in. Confident footsteps approached through the corridor. The door opened. Ethan entered in a sharp suit, holding his bound business plan, and wearing the practice smile he used for unfamiliar investors. His gaze traveled across the office and landed on me. The smile vanished. His grip loosened on the document. Jenna, 10 years ago. He could sit beside me without letting his eyes linger for a second. Now, less than 2 meters separated him from the woman holding his company's future. I met his stare. Mr. White, please sit. The silence in the corner office was not the kind that asked to be filled. It had weight, backed by 32 floors of concrete and steel, high performance, acoustic glass, and the quiet hum of a ventilation system that filtered the air, until it tasted of nothing at all. Ethan White stood just inside the doorway, his right hand frozen around the dark leather spine of his pitch binder. The practiced, open-faced confidence that had carried him through half a dozen secondary venture meetings, seemed to slide off. His features like rain on glass, leaving behind a blank, slack astonishment. Jenna? His voice caught in his throat, scraping on the syllable. He blinked. Twice, his head shifting slightly, as though expecting the light to refract differently and reveal someone else seated behind the broad expanse of smoke. Oak. You're the principal here? Sit down, Mr. White, I said. My voice did not rise or dip. It occupied the room the same way the desk did. He didn't move immediately. His eyes flicked to Amy, who was already closing the heavy soundproof door behind him with a soft, definitive click, and then across the room. The clean lines of the joinery, the framed architectural plans of Summit's logistics hubs in Rotterdam and Singapore, the simple, unadorned Bloomberg terminal beside my monitor. I don't understand, he said, taking 2 tentative steps forward. A nervous, half-formed chuckle escaped him, the old habit of using levity to soften moments where he felt out of his depth. Amy told me I was meeting the managing partner. I thought, well, Ella said you were in asset management or something over in Europe. She didn't say you were Summit. Ella does not manage our corporate filings, I said, opening the manila folder in front of me. And Summit does not run its calendar on family briefings. You have 25 minutes remaining. If you'd like to spend them discussing my resume, we can terminate the session now and save your team the cost of the trip. The color flared in his neck, a dull, mottled red that rose toward his collar. It was a tell I remembered from 8 years ago, back when a professor had questioned the methodology of his senior capstone. Even then, he had always mistaken scrutiny for disrespect. Right, he said, pulling out the ergonomic leather chair opposite mine. He sat, though the movement lacked the casual authority he had brought into the foyer. He placed his binder flat on the leather blotter, fingers smoothing the corner. Out of reflex. Right. Business first. Of course. It's good to see you, Jenna. Really? The materials, please. He opened the binder. Starlight Tech has spent the last 18 months consolidating its enterprise middleware stack. We've identified a critical latency gap in distributed logistics pipelines, what we're calling the linker engine. We're currently serving 12 enterprise pilots with projected recurring ARR scaling to 14 million by Q3 next year. He began his monologue with the rhythm of someone who had rehearsed it in hotel mirrors. His hands moved in measured arcs, his pitch rose at the end of key value propositions. For 3 minutes, he was the Ethan White who had held court at graduation dinners, the golden boy who could convince my father that a $5,000 initial seed from his retirement account was an investment in the future of domestic computing. I didn't interrupt. I let him run through his TAM slides, his market penetration curves, his hockey stick projections drawn in clean, optimistic blue ink. When he reached slide 14, he paused, waiting for the customary nod of encouragement most angel investors gave to keep the room comfortable. I turned one page in my file. Your 12 enterprise pilots, I said, are currently non-paying beta agreements under 90-day evaluation clauses. 7 of them expire within the next 3 weeks. According to your Q2 burn rate, you are spending $480,000 a month on client acquisition and engineering support to maintain those 7 accounts. Ethan's mouth remained slightly open. Those are standard onboarding pipelines. A standard onboarding pipeline converts at 22% in your sector. I continued. Your historical conversion rate over the past 2 years is 6. If those 7 accounts roll off, your monthly recurring revenue drops back below $80,000 against an operational overhead of $610,000. We've restructured the engineering team. You let go of 4 senior backend architects last month and replaced them with offshore contractors on rolling 30-day retainers, I said, looking up from the page directly into his eyes, which reduced your payroll by 12%, but increased your unresolved Jira bug backlog by 84%. Your core client, Redline Logistics, filed 2 formal breach of SLA notices in April. The room grew so still that the faint ticking of his mechanical watch seemed audible across the desk. Where did you get those numbers? His tone had lost its polish. It had thinned into something defensive, almost querulous. Those are internal operational audits. We haven't released the Q2 deck to external parties yet. Summit manages 4 dedicated infrastructure funds, I said. Redline Logistics is a portfolio asset of ours. Their procurement director flags any vendor with an annualized default probability above 15%. Starlight crossed 28% last Tuesday. Ethan reached up and loosened his tie by a fraction of an inch. The silk rustled against his starched collar. Jenna, you know how early-stage growth works. Cash flow tightens right before the curve turns. You remember the concepts we used to talk about in the lab. Scale requires leverage. We just need the bridge facility to close the enterprise tier. Do not call me Jenna in this office, Mr. White. He pulled his hand back from his neck, as if he had touched hot metal. I'm trying to be transparent with you. You are trying to secure $30 million from a firm whose mandate prohibits investing in negative equity companies with debt service coverage ratios below 1.1, I said. Starlight's current ratio is 0.34. You are carrying an $11 million short-term credit line with high-yield collateral, backed by personal guarantees. I tapped the paper twice. You leveraged your primary residence, I said quietly. And the commercial property on 7th Avenue your father-in-law transferred to you 2 years ago. Ethan's jaw tightened. Ella told you. Ella told me you couldn't sleep because the market was unfair, I said. Public property records and UCC-1 financing statements told me you mortgaged your family shelter to float payroll for a platform that has no defensive moat. No defensive moat? His voice cracked, the veneer finally splitting down the middle. Linker is built on the architecture we developed back in university. It's solid. You know it's solid. You spent months going over the logic trees with me in the library. I wrote the logic trees, Ethan. The sentence hung between us, flat and heavy. He didn't answer. He couldn't. For 6 years, the story had been that Starlight was the product of his lone genius, an ambitious young man building a technological empire, while his devoted wife kept the hearth warm and his sister-in-law wandered somewhere abroad, nursing an ancient, unspoken grief. I wrote the white paper in October 2016, I said. I submitted it to the departmental archive. You took the conceptual framework, registered the trademark under your own LLC while I was boarding a flight to Heathrow, and built a front-end interface on top of a data structure you didn't fully understand. That was a collaborative effort. It was a theft of intellectual groundwork that I chose not to litigate because the code was already obsolete by the time I finished my first semester at Wharton. I told him evenly. You have spent 6 years trying to optimize an engine designed for 2016 network protocols. The industry moved to asynchronous container orchestration 4 years ago. Linker isn't failing because the market is harsh. It's failing because you don't know how to rewrite the core logic. Without me. Ethan stared at me, his fingers sinking into the armrests of the leather chair. His chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow increments. You've hated me this whole time. I haven't thought about you in 4 years, I said. The truth of it was worse than anger. He wanted an enemy. An enemy meant he was still the central figure in the narrative, the prize over which 2 sisters had fractured their lives, the brilliant founder whose presence demanded an emotional reckoning. To sit across from someone who simply viewed his life's work as an underperforming line item on a risk ledger was a humiliation he had no vocabulary to process. The board will not approve $30 million, I said, closing the folder with a deliberate, singular motion. The investment committee will not review it. Summit is issuing a formal notice of decline. Amy will email the rejection letter to your corporate address by noon. Ethan stood up abruptly, the chair scraping sharply against the hardwood floor. If you do this, the bank calls the note on Friday. Then you should spend the rest of the day with a restructuring attorney rather than pitching funds outside your tier. Jenna, think about Ella. Think about your niece. His voice rose, vibrating with genuine terror now that the reality of the numbers had finally breached his pride. The house is in Ella's name too. If the bank forecloses, they take everything. Your own family will be out on the street because you wouldn't sign a bridge loan. My fiduciary obligation is to the limited partners of this fund, I said, standing up to meet his height. Not to your vanity. You gambled your family's security to maintain the appearance of a tech mogul. If you lose it, it is because of your balance sheet, not my lack of charity. I looked toward the door. Amy will see you to the elevator. Ethan stood there for 3 seconds, his face pale, his breath rattling in his throat. He looked at the closed folder, then at the pen on the desk, then at the calm, impassive line of my mouth. When he realized there was no secret plea, no suppressed tears, and no lingering childhood deference left to exploit, he grabbed his binder with trembling fingers, turned on his heel, and walked out into the corridor without another word. By 11 that morning, My personal phone began to vibrate against the corner of the blotter. I did not pick it up. I watched the screen light up with Ella's contact card, go dark, light up with my mother's name, go dark, and then begin to flicker with incoming messages in the family group chat. Ella, Jenna, what did you do? Ella, Ethan just came home. He's completely pale. He won't speak to me. He said you threw him out of your office. Ella, how could you treat him like a stranger? He went to you for help. Mom. Jenna Harris, pick up your phone this instant. Mom, your sister is in tears. Ethan has worked day and night for 6 years for this family. You finally get a little desk job in an office, and you think you can look down on him? Dad, call your mother. Now. I set the phone to silent and slid it into the top drawer of the credenza. For the next 4 hours, I worked through the quarterly risk assessments for our logistics portfolio. We approved a $40 million mezzanine debt facility for a cold chain operator in Antwerp. We liquidated a minor stake in a failing hardware manufacturer in Austin. We reviewed the term sheets for a new sustainability fund based in Zurich. At Summit, transactions were clean. Capital flowed toward efficiency and retracted from decay. There were no tears, no historical guilt, no invocations of 7-day hospital vigils to justify a 20% margin shortfall. The numbers did not care who had cried at the airport, and they did not yield to the person who spoke the most sweetly over Sunday dinner. At 3:30 p.m., Amy walked in with a fresh cup of green tea. Mr. White's office reached out to 3 of our co-investors, she said, setting the porcelain cup on a small slate coaster. He tried to pitch the round to Bluecrest and Vanguard Horizon, claiming Summit was in active due diligence and looking for syndication partners. Did you issue the clarification? Bluecrest's managing director called me directly at 2. Amy replied with a faint, professional smile. I informed them that Summit has formally passed on Starlight Tech due to critical governance and solvency concerns. Bluecrest dropped their afternoon introductory call. Good. Also, Amy added, pausing slightly, your mother is in the downstairs lobby. I stopped writing. The fountain pen hovered half an inch above the signature line of the Antwerp authorization. She doesn't have a badge, Amy said. Security informed her that visitors require an appointment, but she told the desk that she is the mother of the CEO and that she isn't leaving until you come down. Did she come alone? Your sister is with her. And a child. I looked out the floor-to-ceiling window. Down below, the mid-afternoon traffic on the avenue crawled between high-rise shadows like a procession of slow beetles. 32 floors below, my mother was likely explaining to a 24-year-old security guard that corporate hierarchy did not apply to mothers, that blood superseded building regulations, and that her elder daughter had always been unnatural in her coldness. Bring them to conference room D, I said. Amy blinked. Not your office? My office is for work, I said. Conference room D has glass walls facing the North Concourse. Let them see what an investment firm looks like. When I entered conference room D 10 minutes later, the dynamic had already settled into its familiar, lifelong arrangement. Ella was sitting near the window, holding her 5-year-old daughter, Chloe, on her lap. She wore a soft cream knit sweater, the kind that made her look fragile, domestic, and utterly incapable of malice. Her eyes were rimmed with pink, her posture slightly slumped, as though the weight of the day had physically diminished her. My mother was pacing the length of the polished walnut conference table, her handbag gripped tightly against her ribs like a weapon. When the heavy glass door swung open, my mother turned instantly, her face settling into the sharp, practiced indignation that had governed my adolescence. Do you know how many people had to sign off on us getting up those elevators? She began without greeting me. The security guards looked at me like I was a beggar on the street. I had to tell 3 different receptionists that I gave birth to you before anyone would even look at the computer. Summit requires security screening for all non-credentialed visitors, I said, remaining by the door. You didn't make an appointment. An appointment? Mom's voice jumped an octave. To see my own daughter? Who do you think you are? Look at your sister. She pointed a sharp, manicured finger at Ella. Look at what you did to her. Ethan came home looking like a corpse. He told us you sat there like an executioner, insulting his company, insulting his family, refusing to help him with 1 phone call. Ella didn't speak right away. She pulled Chloe slightly closer, burying her chin in the child's soft hair, letting a single tear spill over her lower eyelid. Jenna, Ella murmured, her voice trembling with that delicate, breathy cadence. that had always made everyone in the room instinctively lean forward to protect her. If you're still angry at me for marrying Ethan, if this is about what happened after college, you should have punished me. Not him. He spent 6 years trying to build something for our family. He's worked himself to the bone. She looked up, her eyes wide, glistening, and perfectly calibrated. Why do you have to be so cruel? She asked. Is $30 million really worth more to you than your sister's life? I stood by the glass wall. Through the pane, 2 junior analysts walking down the hall glanced in, saw the posture of the room, and immediately averted their eyes, quickening their pace toward the trading floor. $30 million is not mine to give to family members, I said. It belongs to institutional pension funds, university endowments, and corporate treasuries. If I deployed that capital into an insolvent company with fraudulent conversion metrics, I would be committing federal securities fraud. Don't you use big words to confuse us. Mom shouted, stepping between me and Ella. You have money. You've been living in luxury hotels across Europe while Ella stayed home to look after us. When your father had his gallstones, who drove him to the clinic at 4 in the morning? Ella. When my arthritis flared up, who came over to rub ointment on my knees? Ella. I paid the $200,000 for Dad's private surgical wing and post-operative nursing care, I said. Money, Mom scoffed, waving her hand as though batting away a fly. That's all. You know, you throw a check at us because you don't have the heart to sit by a hospital bed. You think writing a number on a piece of paper makes you a daughter? Ella gave us her time. Ethan gave us his respect. He comes over every Sunday. He fixes the television. He asks your father for advice. He asked Dad for $80,000 of his pension 2 years ago, I said calmly. Has he paid back a single cent? The room went dead silent. Mom's mouth remained half open. Ella's hand froze against her daughter's sweater. What did you say? Mom whispered. In March of 2022, I said, walking slowly toward the table. Ethan convinced Dad to liquidate his secondary annuity to purchase preferred shares in Starlight Tech under the table, without board authorization. He told Dad the shares would yield a 12% annual return. He hasn't paid a single distribution because the money was used to cover a defaulted bridge loan from a commercial lender in Delaware. Ella's face lost every trace of its soft, wounded sweetness. The pink in her cheeks drained away, leaving a sharp, gray tension around her mouth. How do you? Who told you that? Ella whispered. I run an asset management firm, Ella, I said. When Ethan submitted his corporate debt schedule this morning, I had my risk team cross-reference his unsecured personal obligations. Dad is listed as an unsecured creditor on Schedule C. If Starlight declares Chapter 7 next week, Dad loses every dollar of that annuity. Mom looked between the two of us, her confusion turning into frantic irritation. Ella? What is she talking about? Ethan said that was a guaranteed high-yield deposit. He said it was safer than the bank. It was just a temporary arrangement, Mom, Ella said quickly, her voice losing its breathy victimhood and tightening into a hurried, defensive snap. Ethan was going to return it as soon as the series be closed. He was trying to help Dad get a better return than the bank's 0.5%. He was doing us a favor. He was using our father's retirement to keep his vanity project alive for another 60 days, I said. I pulled a second document from the folder I had carried in. It was a single sheet of paper. The formal notice of debt covenant breach that Redline Logistics had issued to Starlight that morning, coupled with the bank's foreclosure warning on Ethan's properties. I placed it gently on the table in front of my mother. Look at the numbers, Mom, I said. You've spent 6 years telling the entire family that Jenna is the bitter, lonely failure who ran abroad because she couldn't get a husband, while Ethan is the brilliant young industrialist who conquered the world. Mom stared down at the paper. She didn't understand the financial terms, the debt ratios, or the legal jargon, but she understood the bright red stamp from the district court at the bottom of the page. Notice of imminent default. Look at it, I repeated. Ethan doesn't have a company. He has $22 million in debt, an empty office space with 4 months of unpaid rent, and an intellectual property suite that was stolen from a notebook I left on my desk 8 years ago. The car he drives to your house every Sunday is leased under a corporate account that is 60 days overdue. The watch he wears was purchased on a credit line that is currently being frozen by American Express. Ella stood up, her daughter clutching her neck in alarm. Stop it, Jenna. Stop it. You're just trying to destroy our family because you're jealous. You've always been jealous of me. Ever since we were kids, you were the awkward, ugly one who sat in the corner with your books while everyone loved me. Ethan loved
Me?
He chose me, and you've spent 8 years trying to make him pay for it. I looked at my sister. For the first time in my life, I did not feel the dull, aching knot in my chest that used to tighten every time my mother praised Ella's warmth while criticizing my reserve. I did not feel the ghost of that cold dawn at the airport, dragging 2 heavy suitcases through the terminal alone while the family group chat overflowed with pictures of their wedding breakfast. I saw only an ordinary, frightened woman who had built her entire identity on being the chosen one, only to discover that the prize she had won was an empty box tied with counterfeit ribbon. I don't care who he chose, Ella, I said. You won him. You can keep him.
And
now you can pay his debts. They did not stay long after that. Mom tried to mount one last assault, accusing me of being an unnatural daughter, threatening to cut me out of a family, well, that consisted of a mortgaged house and $3,000 in a savings account, but her voice lacked conviction. It sounded hollow, like a dry leaf rattling against a curb. When they left, escorted down the private executive elevator by 2 stone-faced security officers, the silence returned to the 32nd floor. At 5:30 p.m., the market closed. At 6:15 p.m., the primary creditor for Starlight Tech formally served Ethan White with an acceleration notice, demanding the full settlement of his $11 million secured credit line within 72 hours. At 7 p.m., I received a phone call from Sarah Smith. Jenna? Her voice was cautious, slightly hesitant. I just saw a post on
LinkedIn.
2 of Starlight's lead engineers just updated their profiles to open to work. And there's a rumor circulating in the local tech group that their office on 4th Street was locked by the landlord this afternoon. Is it true? Starlight is entering liquidation, I said, leaning back in my desk chair, looking out over the city lights that were beginning to flicker across the river. God, Sarah breathed. Ella was just posting on Facebook 2 hours ago about how blessed she was, showing a picture of Chloe at some private equestrian club. She said Ethan was finalizing a massive partnership with Summit Holdings. Ethan's partnership with Summit was declined at 9:55 this morning. A long silence hung on the line. Jenna, I'm sorry, Sarah said quietly, for what I said this morning on the
drive.
About what Ella told everyone. We all believed her because, well, because you never said anything. You never posted pictures, you never argued with her in the group chat, you never came back to the alumni reunions to show off. We just assumed she was telling the truth. We thought you were hiding. I wasn't hiding, Sarah, I said. I was working. After hanging up, I opened the family group chat for the last time. The chat history was a 6-year monument to a curated fantasy. There was the photo from 4 years ago, Ethan standing in front of a leased Mercedes, captioned by Ella, "So proud of my hardworking CEO." Next stop, Forbes 30 under 30. My mother had commented, "A true man of the house."
God.
Blessed her, Ella. There was the photo from 2 years ago, Ella holding a designer handbag in a 5-star hotel lobby in Maui, captioned, "Ethan insisted I take a break.
He says,
A successful man's wife should never look tired." My father had commented, "Jenna should learn from her sister. A woman's real career is her family." And buried beneath hundreds of those posts was my single, unadorned message from 3 years ago, Series A closed at $140 million. Ella's reply had been, "That's nice, sweetie. Keep busy." Ethan says small tech shops are cute, but make sure you don't burn yourself out before you find a boyfriend. I didn't type a response. I didn't send a screenshot of the default notice, or the liquidation filing, or the asset register of Summit Holdings. I simply tapped the 3 dots in the top right corner of the application. Export chat history. For legal documentation regarding Dad's unauthorized equity transfer. Leave group. Block all members. The screen cleared. The little red notification bubble vanished from my phone's home screen, leaving the glass clean, black, and quiet. At 9 p.m., I finally left the building. The air outside had cooled, carrying the sharp, metallic scent of an approaching summer thunderstorm. The street was quiet, the rush hour crowds having dispersed into restaurants and suburban train platforms. As I approached my car in the reserved executive bay behind the tower, a figure stepped out from the shadow of the concrete pillar. Jenna. Ethan was no longer wearing his jacket. His tie was stuffed awkwardly into his shirt pocket, his sleeves rolled up unevenly, revealing pale, hairless forearms. His hair was disheveled from the wind, and he smelled faintly of sour sweat and cheap bar scotch. "You can't do this," he said, stepping into the path of my car door. He held his hands out, palms upward, in a posture that was half pleading, half threatening. "You have to take a look at the restructuring plan. Just 50%. Give me 15 million. Summit won't even notice 15 million. You write checks larger than that for logistics software every month. Step away from the vehicle, Ethan," I said, my hand resting on the door handle. "I know I made mistakes," he said, his voice dropping into a desperate, hurried whisper. He took a half step closer, his eyes bloodshot and wide. "I should have given you credit for the 2016 paper. I should have put your name on the patent filing. I'll do it now. I'll issue an amended registration tomorrow morning. We can rebrand the engine together. The Harris White architecture. You'll be the majority IP holder." I looked at him under the cold white glare of the overhead LED floodlights. 10 years ago, in the university computer lab, this man had stood over my shoulder while I debugged algorithms until 3 in the morning. He had smiled, brought me lukewarm coffee from the vending machine, and told me that gentle, supportive girls were the ones who truly inspired greatness in men. And then, when the draft was complete, he had copied the repository to an external drive, taken my sister to an expensive dinner on his father's credit card, and let her announce their engagement on the steps of the library. He had believed, with the absolute, unshakable arrogance of a mediocre man, surrounded by adoring women, that the world would always honor his charm over my labor. "You still don't understand, do you?" I said. He paused, his mouth open, searching my face for a crack, a glimmer of the old, quiet girl who used to sit beside him like a telephone pole. "Understand what?" he asked. "I'm offering you 50% of the company. I'm offering you the credit. Starlight Tech is worth $0, Ethan," I said clearly. "Your patent is obsolete. Your enterprise contracts are canceled. Your debt exceeds your assets by $18 million. Why would Summit buy 50% of a corpse?" "Because of us," he cried out, his voice echoing through the empty concrete garage. "Because of what we were. You loved me. You spent 4 years watching me. You went to Wharton because you wanted to prove something to me. You can't tell me you built all this, and none of it was about me." I looked at him for a long, quiet moment. "Ethan," I said, my voice dropping into that calm, flat register that brooked no appeal. "I went to Wharton because I got a full academic fellowship. I built Summit because I am exceptionally good at capital allocation. You were not the catalyst for my success. You were merely the first bad investment I ever cut." I pulled open the door, sat in the driver's seat, and pressed the ignition button. The engine purred to life with a low, smooth vibration. Ethan stood by the window, tapping his knuckles against the reinforced glass, shouting something that was completely muffled by the car's sound insulation. His mouth moved in frantic, ugly shapes. His face was twisted with the realization that the world he had constructed out of charm, stolen work, and familial praise was collapsing into dust, and the woman he had dismissed was driving away into a life he could neither enter nor comprehend. I shifted the car into reverse, backed out of the bay, and turned toward the ramp leading up to the street. Behind me, in the rearview mirror, Ethan White remained standing under the harsh white floodlight, a small, dark, solitary figure marooned in the middle of a concrete floor, growing smaller and smaller with every turn of the wheels until he disappeared entirely into the dark.